What is going on, everybody? It is your boy Gsluke here for our round 4 DFS live stream for the Charles Schwab Challenge. We're going to go over everything you need to know for tomorrow, whether it's the weather, player pool, ownership, or of course some strategy talk, because for Sunday that is always a huge talking point. We can go over any of your live questions too. So literally whatever you guys need to know for tomorrow, let's go ahead and chat about it. But without further ado, let's go ahead and start it off with a review of today's slate and, of course, a look at tomorrow's weather. I can see you have Wilson down there in chat already. What is going on, guys? Hopefully, you're having a solid start to your Saturday evening here. But here for the third round, it played maybe slightly easier than I expected, particularly in the morning wave, but still well over par, a lot more difficult than what we saw there on Friday's round. And for round 4, I would expect that to continue. So not to get too ahead of myself here, but the weather looks even nastier than what we had for Saturday. So you can see the scoring average was plus 0.61, which I might have expected it to be closer to actually a stroke over par, maybe even a little bit higher than that. But you have to remember, these are world-class players, and the players that are playing here on Saturday and Sunday are a whole lot better in terms of average skill level, I would say, than what we have here for Thursday and Friday. Of course, a lot of those lower tier players have already been cut out of the player pool, so you would expect the scoring average to get better here on Saturday, at least in terms of like a general skill level. So let's head over to the weather here for Sunday, where you can see it is pretty darn nasty. We have 14 to 22 miles an hour of sustained winds for the entire day, and is slightly lower in the morning. You can see right around a 5 to 6 mile an hour difference in terms of the sustained wind, but nothing drastic. All right. I mean, 15 miles an hour is still nothing to scoff at. And of course, these 21 to 22 miles an hour of sustained winds in the afternoon are also going to be quite fearsome. You're going to see scoring again at least this 0.61 number, if not closer to actually a stroke over par. In terms of some of the gusts, it does pretty much vary throughout the day. I mean, in the morning, it's in that 30 to 20 range. So you're talking about a 5 mile an hour differential right there. And then in the afternoon, they're a little bit more robust, but no matter when you're playing, you're going to be dealing with nasty conditions. So I don't think it's a slate where we have to try and look at an AM versus a PM wave thing, because I mean, look at today. If you split it by the AM PM wave, it is exactly the same, plus 0.61 for the morning and plus 0.61 for the afternoon. So of course, today the wind was slightly lower in the morning than it was in the afternoon. So you would have expected it to play slightly easier, but the guys that are playing in the morning are also not as good form as the guys that are in first place. So you can see that today was a relatively even playing field. And here for Sunday's round, I would expect that to be the same case. So of course, there's a lot to think about when it comes to Sunday Showdown with the placement points involved with every single player. But from a pure projection standpoint, where we're just trying to project how many fantasy points these guys are going to score, there's not going to be an advantage to playing in the morning or the afternoon wave. Now, with that being said, Sunday Showdown is such a conundrum because we have those placement points at play. So let's go ahead and bring up the board here. And as I like to usually do here for Sunday Showdown, we're going to go ahead and sort this by score. We're not going to do it by Draftkings price like we usually do here, because placement points are so vitally important for a Sunday Showdown, but particularly for a Sunday Showdown when we have difficult conditions like we're going to expect for tomorrow. So let me go ahead and just explain the nitty-gritty details, some of the basics for maybe people that are new to a Sunday Showdown. On Thursday through Saturday Showdown, you just score based on your birdie production, your eagle production. You get bonuses for 3 birdies in a row. Also for having no bogeys on your card, for having a clean scorecard, you get an extra 5-point bonus. All of that applies for Sunday, except that you get the placement point bonus, just like you would for a 4-round contest. The guy that finishes in first place gets the most placement points, all the way down to the guys that I believe in Sunday Showdown are down in that like 40 to 50 range. You're getting somewhere around half a point or 1 point added to your score. Now, it's not the 30 points that you get for first place in a 4-round contest. Here on Sunday, I believe it's 12 points to first place. It's either, I think it changed. It's either 12 or 15 points, if my memory serves me right. But in either circumstance, it's significant enough where you have to really incorporate that into your projections, particularly when conditions are going to be tough. And, if we weren't incorporating the placement points over here, we'd be projecting players for, maybe right around like 35 fantasy points, 36 fantasy points at a max. And that would be for somebody like a Scotty Scheffler. Now we have him projected at 48 fantasy points, right? Which is a huge differential over guys like Scott Stallings here, 15 points lower. But even the guys like a Scott Stallings, at 34 fantasy points at $7,800 are drastically higher projected than some of the guys down here in this range that are at like 23 or even 17 fantasy points, because they're not getting any credit at all, pretty much, maybe like a point at most in terms of their placement points. So just understand that first off, that is baked into the projections that we have here, but it completely changes your thought process. Essentially, your goal is to end up with the top 6 golfers on the board. Now, if there's somebody who's +5 today that ends up shooting something like 8 under par tomorrow, scores a ton of points when it comes to birdie production, you're going to have them for the large field GPP per se, right, to have that actual optimal lineup. But in practice, a lot of times you never see that lineup actually entered into the contest, right? There might be that guy who shoots 7 to 8 under par, but the guy who actually wins the GPP doesn't have that player. That's because in Sunday Showdown, a lot of the ownership is vastly centered around these players up top. I mean, look at this. I mean, 70% ownership on Scotty Scheffler. You're not going to see that on any other slate. I mean, 30% on Scott Stallings, right? Nearly 40% on Harold Varner III. And Harold Varner III is going to be 50% plus owned when it comes to some of those single dollar, higher dollar contests here tomorrow. So it's a little bit of a different ordeal in total, just going after a Sunday Showdown. You can't be using the same thought process that you're using there for Thursday through Saturday's rounds. So let's go ahead and talk through some of the plays that I like. And again, I think you have to play Scotty Scheffler. I think he's pretty much finishing in the top 3 here no matter what. He's got the skill set you need for this golf course. And I mean, even if I didn't play him in 4-round stuff, right, I'm not just going to blindly fade the guy just because I hope he fails. I hope he folds, right? For my 4-round stuff, that'd be great. But the fact of the matter is he has the well-rounded game that we're looking for, and he was able to showcase that today, right? One of the few players that was able to shoot under par, had the clean card there until the 17th hole, right? Was able to hold that together for quite some time. And, if he goes out there tomorrow, shoots something like 2 under par, because he's getting 12 placement points, it might even be 15, right? Like I said, don't hold me to that. For finishing in first place, I mean, that's a huge ordeal. I mean, that's enough to clearly project him as the highest projected player on the slate. The only people that come close, you have Mito Pereira here at 42 points. A lot of that is due to his birdie production. His birdie or better percentage drives a lot of that projection. But guys like a Chris Kirk, HV3, right? He has him by a solid 8.5 fantasy points there, which, I mean, in terms of a median projection, that is a significant difference, right? It's almost a 20% difference in their projections right there. So certainly guys that I'm going to be playing in bulk would be Scotty Scheffler. Also taking a look at Scott Stallings. In terms of some of like the middle tier options, the ones that I believe in are the veteran options, the ones that have won before, that have been in this situation. I mean, Brendan Todd has won before, so I guess he'd be one guy I'm fading just based on his momentum. He shot 5 under par today. I think he's going to be way too highly owned. I mean, odds are he goes out there, kind of falls flat on his face. We've seen that time and time again from guys that have those ceiling rounds. But guys like Harold Varner III that I'm fading, have a track record of kind of falling apart on Sunday. And because I'm playing Scotty Scheffler, I'm going to have to pivot somewhere. And for me, that is going to be in the 9K range. I'm not playing Harold Varner III on this slate. I'm going to be avoiding guys like Davis Riley. Also, Mito Pereira is not going to be in my player pool. And a few other examples, Andrew Putnam is not going to be in my pool. I'm just pivoting from those 30 to 40% options that I'm going to have to pivot from to not have, 60% or 40% owned plays in every slot in my lineup, which you can't do for Sunday Showdown. If you do that, you might literally duplicate yourself with like 500 to 600 people. Time in and time again, it's a 14,000 entry contest here for the large field contest on Draftkings. You're going to see like a 200 to 300 man entry that has, let's see if we could just identify it right now. It's going to have Scheffler, Stallings, and Brendan Todd. I can guarantee you that. It's probably going to have HV3 in the lineup and some type of combination of like maybe a Patrick Reed and Cameron Davis. If you can fit all those guys into the same lineup, I can almost guarantee you that that's going to be duplicated like 400 times tomorrow. And that lineup's chances of like actually winning first place and being the optimal build are, slightly higher than most lineups, right? Because you're starting with a lot of the placement points. But because some of these guys that are at 5, 4 under par, 3, maybe even 2 under par have a legitimate shot of vaulting up the leaderboard, it's not higher than anything in the 1% range. in terms of success rate, right? And if you end up finishing in first, tied for 200 other people, even with a 100K to first type of thing, I mean, you're looking at, $3,000 at most for winning first place in a GPP, right? That's what you want to avoid. So that's the strategy here. That's why I'm avoiding some of these guys. I mean, I like HV3. I have him in my 4-round contest. It's just if you're playing a Scotty Scheffler who's going to be 70% owned, right? You got to differentiate at some point, right? So that's the take I'm taking. And the reason for it is because he folds on Sundays, like I said. Just time and time again, he doesn't have his best stuff on Sundays. The shots gained when he's in contention on a Sunday are pretty atrocious. A few other guys that we're going to, though, I do like Chris Kirk. I do like Patrick Reed. First off, Chris Kirk has had a ton of success at this golf course. He's shown in crunch time before at Colonial that he has what it takes to go out there and have success. So I see myself getting there at $8,900. I also have him projected for less ownership than an HV3. Patrick Reed, he kind of had a disappointing day. He shot 1 over par today, which could have been a whole lot worse. I mean, the scoring average was plus 0.61, so is pretty much an average day if you compare it to the field. But we'd expect more from Patrick Reed, given what he showed there on Thursday and Friday, given his pedigree, at least a historical pedigree, right? The recent form for Reed has definitely not been there, but I hope he returns to that Thursday, Friday form because it was beautiful. He was gaining off the tee. He did that again today. It was just the approach play that went away, which last week he gained over 5 strokes on approach at the PGA Championship. On Thursday and Friday, he had already gained over 3 strokes to the field with the approach play. It abandoned him today, right? But, last 7 or 6 rounds, I guess, at this point, opposed from today's round have been really solid on approach. So hopefully he can tune back into that. At least that's what I'm hoping here for Sunday. Cam Davis will be a fade. In terms of his success to this point, I would say it's surprising. I am a Cam Davis stan, I have to say, because he won me 135-1 last year at the Rocket Mortgage Classic. Made over $20,000 on that bet. It was one of the best bets I've ever had, period, regardless of sport, especially from the outright perspective. So I love the guy to death, but I wouldn't expect him to have success, especially today in the conditions that we had, right? It's, windy. He has a high ball flight. He's not the best around the green. In terms of his recent form, right, he's number 53 in my modeling. He was number 67 in terms of his recent form, right? He hadn't really shown anything to us. So I'm as surprised as anyone that Cameron Davis is having the week that he has, but I just don't see it on Sunday. He's going to be super highly owned. For him to actually crack the optimal lineup, he's still going to have to shoot like 2 to 3 under par. Even though placement points are more important, you're going to see that a lot of my emphasis are with the trailers, with the guys here at like 4 or 5 under par that are, going to be a third less owned than the guys here up top. And in terms of scoring and projection, I mean, most of these guys I project higher than the guys that are up here at the top of the leaderboard. And then when you're talking about ownership, game theory, you start to involve that side of the game. They become no-brainer pivots to me. And pretty much every showdown slate that I tout here on here, I talk up with you guys is going to see that, especially for Sunday, is just to avoid this chalk up top because, you're going to see a handful of them go off, right? I'm hoping that that's going to be a Patrick Reed, Chris Kirk, obviously Scotty Scheffler and Scott Stallings. And there's going to be a handful of them that go out there and shoot over par, right? And I'm obviously hoping that that's Brendan Ton HV3. You're going to have to take stands up top. You can't play everybody. If you do, you're going to duplicate yourself with the entire field, and you're not going to have enough shots to actually succeed when you get things right. So let's move on. Sorry, that was probably really loud. Sorry about that. We have Mito Pereira. He also folded last Sunday, so kind of like an HV3. I don't hate the play, but he's out of my pool because of that. You can see I have him as a blank. Bo Hostler, same story. Every time we've gotten this guy in contention, he's folded. The only time he only kind of folded was at Pebble Beach. If you remember, he was in contention there. He shot 3 over par early on through his first 10 holes, I believe, and then kind of rebounded towards the end. But I mean, to be 3 over through 10 holes and only finish like even par or 1 under like he did there, that's still folding, right? So, time after time, he hasn't had that ceiling performance on Sunday. So I'm going to be avoiding it. Now let's talk about let's talk about the fun range. I guess before we do so, we'll catch up on chat here. We have Steven in the house. What is going on? Catch Me If You Can says, hit the 2K buy-in today. Luke's picks assisted on 3 of 5. Thank you, brother. Glad to hear on that. That's pretty sweet. Anytime you have a 4-digit day, I don't think you can complain. So glad to hear on that. Robert says 13 points for first, 0.5 for the 41st through 50th. Yeah, I thought so. I don't know why I thought it was 12, but yeah, 13 for first place. It's like zero point 0.5 for 40th through 50th, and it's 1 point through, I believe, 25th through 40th, something like that. And just check the scoring on there. I have it already built into the projection, so it kind of does it by itself. I think the reason why I thought it was 12 points is because the guy that I have projected to win the golf tournament, I give 12 placement points to. So I don't give him the full 13, right? So obviously it's partial, but I think that's why I thought that. Hef Sterling says, "What is up, Luke? Looks like Scotty's pretty much got this wrapped up. 54.8% win probability." So, yeah, I would tend to agree. Like I said, he's got the skill set to take this apart. He's got the 2-shot lead at this point. He's going to shoot 2-3 under par tomorrow, I think, at the very least. And barring a miracle, somebody going out there and taking this place ballistic, he's got this thing in the bag. And realistically, the only people that could do that would be a Scott Stallings and a Brendan Todd. Maybe the guys at 7 under par, right? But they'd have to shoot something like 7, 8 under par themselves, double up the score that they've already gone to go out there and win this thing. So realistically, it's more like the Brendan Todd, Scott Stallings. They're going to go out there and have to shoot like 5, 6 under par. Again, assuming I think Scotty's going to be rock solid tomorrow. I think he's going to go out there and shoot a few under par. I mean, I just don't see it from either one of them. Quite frankly, I don't see it at all. I don't see Scott Stallings or Brendan Todd going out there and shooting 6 under par on a Sunday with all that pressure. They're just, not to rag on them too much, they're just not those guys. They're not those. They're just not that. I don't want to say they're not that talented, but they're not those elite level players that run down people on a Sunday, right? If they did, I think we'd be pretty mind blown. So yeah, I'd have to agree with you there, Hef. Sibo says, "Are you considering Colin Morikawa for round 4?" So I'm not. I just, the ball striking was so off today. His iron shots were there. Where's he at? He's like, even par or something like that. He's 1 over par. The iron shots were there, but he didn't make anything. But his off the tee play through his first 7 fairways, he only hit 1. And I was only tracking that because one of my buddies had a Prize Picks prop on it where he took the over on Colin Morikawa's fairways. And that prop hit the under by the turn. So if he's not hitting fairways, it doesn't really matter if the putter even comes alive. He's not going to shoot what we need him to. And at 1 over par, given that we need Scotty Scheffler in our lineup, so we know if we're taking Colin Morikawa, that's taking us away from some of the guys we're about to talk about, which I like a whole lot more. I just can't do it, right? These guys that are like a Jordan Spieth, for example, we're going to talk about here in a second. If he shoots 5 under par tomorrow, he's not winning this golf tournament, but he's finishing in 2nd or 3rd place. And with the 5 birdies or even 6 birdies for shooting something in that range worth of points and 2nd and 3rd place worth of placement points, I mean, he could be the highest scoring player on the slate, right? Whereas a guy like Colin Morikawa, right? He's 1 over par. He shoots 5 under par tomorrow, has that respectable score in terms of his birdie production. He's going to finish in like 15th to 20th place. He's going to get like 2.5 placement points. Whereas, that guy like Jordan Spieth is getting upwards of 7 to 8 placement points, right? So you have to be close enough to the top of the leaderboard to actually capitalize on movement up the leaderboard. Whereas Colin Morikawa is so far back to where, his ceiling is 2 to 3 placement points, which isn't all that attractive to me, to be honest. We have Wilson who says Kevin Na, he was up and down today. I'm definitely going to have Kevin Na tomorrow. A lot of it just comes down to the upside with the putter. I mean, he can get that thing working like no other, right? He makes those 20 to 30 footers in bunches when he has that thing scorching. So I'll be there. We have Eddie says, other than Chef, who could win this realistically? I don't want to say nobody, but let's talk about the circumstance where people could win this golf tournament other than Scotty Scheffler. If he goes out there tomorrow and shoots 2 over par, it looks really bad. And for Scotty Scheffler to shoot over par on this golf course, he's really going to have to wake up on the wrong side of the bed. He's really going to have to not have his stuff. It opens up a lot of outcomes, right? I mean, in that type of scenario, the front runners for me, front runner for me would have to be Patrick Reed. They're at 7 under par. He shoots something like 4 or 5 under tomorrow. He could steal this thing. Chris Kirk, I love him tomorrow too. Given the fact that he's won this golf tournament, he's obviously been here in crunch time. I think that helps his case. A little bit further back, I think Jordan Spieth, like I said, he has that ceiling around of 6 under par, which it's out there. I mean, Brendan Todd proved that today. And Brendan Todd did that on his first 8 holes. He shot to 5 under par, shot even par the rest of the way. If you really have your stuff at Colonial Country Club, regardless of conditions, I mean, you can take it nuclear low, something like 7 to 8 under par. Jordan Spieth is one of the only players in the field, I think, that can actually get to that number. Victor Hovland at 4 under, and again, he's even one back of Jordan, so you're really asking for a lot there with Hovland. But if he shoots someone like 7 to 8 under, he might be able to. Mito, if he had a just world-class day, I don't see it happening at all. Again, in fact, I'm not playing him in DFS, right? So I don't think it's all that likely. But Mito Pereira has the firepower to get there. And that's probably about it, to be honest with you. I mean, Scott Stallings, Brendan Todd, even though they're at 9 under par, I'd put them at like 5 or 6 on my leaderboard in terms of most likely to win this golf tournament after Scheffler. I mean, they're not even, I'd put guys like Kirk, Reed, even like a Jordan Spieth ahead of people like them, just based on the pure firepower, right? And based on just ability to actually get to 5 or 6 under par with the conditions that we have. So that'll be what I have there. Wilson says, I was bummed. I was watching TV and Scotty's was going to get a solo lead and then he missed. And then and then you were surprised by that. Yeah, I was surprised by a lot of his putting early on. I mean, it looked like they were playing hot potato with the lead. Guys were all there at 9 under par. There was Todd. You had Stallings there at one point. You had Hostler tied for the lead. There were 5 people at 9 under par. And for at least an hour of TV coverage, not one of them made a birdie. They just all remained tied there for an hour. And whoever took the lead there, I felt as if was going to hold on to it for quite some time. Of course, it ended up being Scotty Scheffler. And of course, that ended up bearing out. So I'm not really surprised about how this leaderboard looks right now. But, I wish there would have been a little bit more fight from the guys out there. It was just, again, it looks like they were playing hot potato with the lead. Let's talk about some of these chasers, though. So I do like Jordan Spieth quite a bit. He's at 5 under par. He has the firepower to take it low. So kind of like I said, if you're going to take any chasers, I think it makes sense to take a Jordan Spieth. And because I'm avoiding some of the guys like a HV3, for example, same thing with a Cameron Davis and Davis Riley, I can take a Scotty Scheffler and a Jordan Spieth in the same lineup. And, if I'm going to be taking them together, it's going to be in the same lineup. Assuming that Scotty still has that solid round, still finishing in the top 3 of this event, getting those placement points, and then Jordan Spieth potentially having a ton of birdies. Doesn't even have to win the golf tournament to be in the optimal lineup, like I mentioned. A top 5 plus 5 or 6 birdies is going to be more than enough. So that's why he's in the poll there. Zane Hoot, I like at -5. He ended up shooting -1 or -2 today, something in that range. Either circumstance, it was like all pars. He was hitting the ball to like 10 to 20 feet on every single hole. It just couldn't buy a putt for his life. And historically, he's a great putter, if not a prolific putter, especially with what we've seen in his limited sample size. So I do like him there at $8,100. Chad Raby had a very sneaky day today. He shot 1 under par. He's at 5 under there. He's a great bent grass putter. Also played well at the Corrales Punta Cana, of course, a tournament that he won under very similar windy conditions. You have Victor Hovland. I think he's a decent chaser to take. From his round, he double bogeyed the first hole, which made it look a whole lot worse than it was in reality because he was making birdies out there. He was hitting a ton of solid iron shots. And the reason why I like Hovland more than Morikawa, it's not just the placement on the leaderboard, it's also the putter. Victor Hovland, much more consistent with the flat stick than somebody like a Colin Morikawa. So I like him there, potentially in that same kind of role like a Jordan Spieth, where I'm obviously going to have a Scotty Scheffler in the lineup, just doubling up top with 2 10K options, going to somebody like a Scotty Scheffler and a Victor Hovland there. I like Kevin Na. I know somebody asked about him before. I like how he can get hot in a hurry with the putter. Tony Finau, he shot 3 under today, but it realistically could have been a whole lot better than that. He just hit the ball to 5 feet and made a ton of 5-footers for birdie today. He didn't have any of those like 15 to 20 footers or anything there. So at $8,600, a super cheap price tag for his skill set. Certainly going to be in my pool. Anytime we have really windy conditions, I think you have to consider Russell Knox, particularly if he's in the 6K range, and especially if he's at -4 within striking distance of that top 10, goes out there, makes 4 to 5 birdies like we're looking for, very well going to finish in the top 10. If Kurt Kitayama at -4, he played well at the Honda Classic, another solid wind player you can get to for super cheap. Sungjae Im played wonderful today. In fact, he made 6 birdies, which, great compared to his first 2 rounds where I believe he made 3 birdies total. So doubled up on that here in the 3rd round, but finally figured it out with the flat stick. He had gained over 5 strokes on approach through the first 2 rounds. That type of play style continued here on Saturday, but of course, brought the putter around as well, where he had lost over 5 strokes to the field with the first 2 days. So I like the ball striking. Now I like the putting that we're seeing from Sanjay. So another chaser that I'm willing to get to. And I'd argue you could probably fit Scotty. You probably put Hovland in a lineup and Sanjay M, or at the very least, you can take Scotty, put Sanjay into a lineup, and take a few of these 8K guys together, right? Like a Christian Bazane, who Tony Finau. Those are the type of builds that I'm going to be going with when I take somebody like a Sanjay M. It's not going to be him as my first man in. Obviously, he would be as an aggressive second man in, similar type of role, I would say, to somebody like a Jordan Spieth. We have Dylan Fratelli and Matt Jones, who I will be playing. First off, Fratelli, great in windy conditions. We saw that at the Open Championship. He was in contention early on there. Matt Jones won the Honda Classic, was in contention at the Honda Classic this time. So, of course, is pretty solid when things get dicey with the weather. We have Taylor Gooch, another very well-renowned wind player. We have Austin Smotherman, just a madman. His birdie or better percentage is off the charts. So, I'm a little bit more willing to take risks down low with a 7K option than I am with somebody like a 9K option there. Even Taylor Gooch, the only reason he makes my poll here at -2 is because he's such a good wind player. I mean, you saw it today. He had great ball striking numbers here on Saturday. So just hope he finds that hot putter, shoots something like 5 to 6 under par, maybe has to make 6 birdies to crack the optimal lineup. But if anybody's going to do it this far back, my money would be on Taylor Gooch. So I like him and Smotherman, like I said. And that's about it, right? There's a few guys I'd consider taking flyers on. Emiliano Grillo, a great approach player, might get things working there. You have Ryan Palmer. He's a member of this golf course, of course, lives on property. So if he could take this place low, maybe shoot his best round ever around here, could be worth a few looks. But Charles Schwab, a very streaky player. Lucas Herbert loves some difficult conditions. So like I said, none of those are going to make my pool. But if you're playing 150 lineups, you needed to beef up your player pool a little bit. Those would be the first options that I'm getting to. And in terms of guys up top, I'd consider adding Mito Pereira. If I was playing 150 lineups, Pat Perez would make my player pool. Sam Burns, somebody I didn't talk about before, but had a wonderful day today. I just think people are going to get there, right? Today he was super low owned. He was kind of my diamond in the rough, per se, the guy that I played that no one else did, and paid off big time, cracked the optimal lineup. But the issue is for tomorrow, that's very unlikely to happen again, right? He was just a shot in the dark type of play, because in reality, this is not his type of golf course. He's much more suited for a long golf course or just a birdie fest in general, not blustery, windy conditions, right? The fact that he had the round that he did today surprised me maybe just as much as a Cam Davis. So I'm not counting on it happening again, but if I was in 150 lineups, I'd probably take a few shots on him. Same thing with Sahith Theegala, Adam Svensson there, Denny McCarthy, and Lucas Glover. Pretty much everyone have as a blank would fit that type of description. Let's go ahead and wrap up the questions here and wrap up the live stream. So if you do have any players you want a deep dive on, go ahead and let me know right now so I can cover that before we hop on out of here. We have Eddie says, other than Chef, I already answered that, my bad. And already answered Wilson's question too. So if we have no questions, we're going to wrap it up there. I appreciate you guys stopping by as per usual. Next week, we do have the Memorial Tournament, so we'll be covering that in its entirety. It's a fun event. It has a difficult feel to it, kind of like a major championship where you have that 3 to 4 inch rough, pretty undulated greens that are going to run at like a 13 or 13 and a half. So if you're looking to get a early feel for the U.S. Open, I think you're going to like the Memorial next week, and that's at Muirfield Village, which is Jack Nicklaus's golf course. So has that added factor to it too. But I appreciate you guys stopping by. Best of luck here for round 4, and let's get this cash.